what is our strategy?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and record. So we're going to go ahead and record, and I am going to, Peter, make you the host so you can share.
Okay.
And
thank you.
I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We are super excited. And I'm Dionne Mischler. I'm one of the co-founders of SalesClass.ai. And Peter Cohan is with us today talking about delivering great demos, which is something we should all be schooled in regularly, repeatedly, constantly, all the time. And so I'm super excited that Peter is here. And SalesClass.ai is a platform that Chad Burmeister, who's also here, that we launched earlier the month of August. And so for those of you, yes, this is a brand new platform. You can probably still smell the sawdust in the air right from the creation. And so Peter is our fearless #1 person to deliver our very live session on delivering great demos. So thank you for joining us. We are so happy that everybody's here. Peter, thank you for being here. We will absolutely have you back. And I have personally had the opportunity to engage Peter for different sessions. And I got to tell you, you guys, everybody's in for a treat. This is going to be amazing. And as you take what he's learned and apply it, you will see the results that you want to see. So thank you for joining us. When you get a chance, visit the SalesClass.ai platform. We'll put some more information in the chat for everybody as we go. And then with that, Peter, I'm going to turn it over to you for today.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what we can do here is if people have specific questions they want to try to have answered, I say try to have answered, go ahead and post them in the chat or the Q&A. And Dionne can let us know if there are questions, but we'll go ahead in the meantime and kick things off. But I'm going to kick things off a little bit informally here. So Dionne and Chad, if you'd unmute for a second. In your experience, well, I'll start with a question. Have you ever seen a bad software demonstration?
95% of the time.
95% of the time. And what would you characterize as the attributes of a software demonstration that was not successful? What would you say?
Very little discovery and show up and throw up, and not very good listening as I respond back throughout the demonstration.
Perfect. Dionne, anything from your side?
Yes, I have been on the receiving end, and I agree. Not a lot of prep, not a lot of thought to it, a lot of jumping into a canned demo that they were told to give at the end of the day.
So this is an interesting observation, canned demos. So far too often I hear people presenting a demo based on the idea that one size fits all, which is ridiculous because every customer has his or her own specific requirements. And along those lines, Dionne, can you imagine a universe where there was only one type of shoe? It's a size 5.5 leopard skin pump, and that's the only shoe you could ever have. Can you imagine a world like that?
No, but I want to.
But you want one of those. Okay, great. You're misproving my point. Chad, on the other hand, let's go to Chad. Can you imagine a world where all they had were UGG boots?
Yeah, not in the summertime. Maybe
not in the summertime.
That wouldn't serve me well.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are 3 populations out there in the world with respect to software demos. There are those that don't even know that they have a problem. And by that I mean they've been doing traditional demos over and over again. As far as they're concerned, status quo is just fine. And to a certain degree, what we're trying to do is to wake those people up and let them know that perhaps things could be better. The second group is an intriguing group, and they're, if you will, even more challenged because they know they have a problem, but they have not yet decided that it's big enough to address. And in the world of software, I can share with you very, very simply that if the demo doesn't do its job, well, I'll ask you guys, what happens to the sales process if the demo doesn't do its job?
Yeah, it stalls.
It comes to a thundering halt. The third group is a group that I love, and that's the group, of course, that knows they have a problem and is seeking action to actually fix that problem. So with all three groups in mind, if you will, I'm going to go ahead and, in a moment, I'm going to share my screen and share some thoughts and ideas that I put together to at least kick this session off. And now we've been having some folks join, of course, because like all Zoom meetings, the moment that the meeting reminder goes off, we finish up that last email, we get ourselves organized for something else, we get a cup of coffee. So I'm going to have to, I don't know who that was, but I'll ask you to mute yourself, or I'll have to mute you. In either case, the meeting goes off, we finish up that email, and then about 3 to 5 minutes later, we actually join the meeting. So based on that, folks, welcome. For those of you that just came in a moment ago, the format here is going to be, I'm going to present some ideas, and then if you have specific questions or topics you'd like to introduce, more than happy to try to embrace those. So let's do a couple of quick checks. Actually, let me bring up my chat dialog box. If everyone would open up their chat dialog box here for a moment, because we're going to use it. So can you see a slide that says 7 habits for stunningly successful demos? If you can, please everyone type yes or slide or and how or something like that. All right, good. We have people. And if you can see my mouse in the upper left-hand corner of my screen, please type mouse or left. Okay, good. And down in the bottom right corner, type bottom or right or small mouse. Okay, excellent. And I'm going to have to assume that you responding to this, you can hear the sound of my voice adequately. So if you, here will be a great test. If you can't hear my voice, type what? Let's see who types what here. Thanks a lot, Sachin. I knew you would do that. All right, gentlemen, ladies, here's some thoughts. Number one, let me go here. Number one, would you agree with this statement here? If you do, please type yes or something equally strong in your chat dialog box. Okay, good. Exactly what I would say. And would you also agree with this statement right here? Chad says they're below average. I love it. Okay, good. So with that in mind, here's really what we're talking about. We are moving from traditional practices to data-driven practices for pre-sales, for sales, for all kinds of actions. And with respect to pre-sales, sales, and demos, we're talking about data-driven intelligence, discovery, demos, POCs when they need to be done, and analysis of how we are doing. And this is really the key. It's one thing to have opinions about the best way or the right way or the wrong way to do things. But when you have data and you can actually analyze the data and draw conclusions from that data, well, that's entirely different. So we're moving from, if you will, this is the way we've always done our demos, to, well, let me ask in your chat dialog box, what do you guys think about this statement here at the bottom, or the middle bottom? And Chad and Dionne, go ahead and comment if you'd like.
I agree with you. I think that term continuous improvement is huge, right? So I think a lot of times when leaders and companies are building something, there's a lot of set it and forget it. And then we forget about the opportunity to do some of the deep work required for continuous improvement.
You know, I love to say we are victims of momentum. We are victims of momentum. We continue to do the same thing over and over unless we get a substantive change into a new direction. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about here. So with that, the best practices are not based on opinions. They're based on data. And in the case of demos, I have some delightful news, folks. It's based on a lot of data. Anybody interested in learning more, please type yes, yes, please, more. Raise your hands. Okay, good. Because if you don't say yes, we're stopping. All right. So based on that, about 2 years ago, 2.5 years, a company called Gong.io in the San Francisco Bay Area did a study of what was initially, let me grab my annotation tool here, what was initially 67,149 recorded demos. I will note that that number now is on the order of, go ahead and read it out loud, Dionne.
3 million.
Actually, you know, we need somebody who's slightly bald who would say 3 million, never mind, demos, for those who remember the reference. And what they analyzed was a number of things. They basically took a look at key success factors in demos. They identified basically 7 habits that I've abstracted here for stunningly successful demos. But before we talk about those habits, would you guys like a brief example of what great might look like? Everybody just please say yes. Give me a yes, please, in the chat dialog box if you would. Okay, good. Chad, would you be my customer, my victim for this example?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Excellent. Chad, you are this guy right here. You're a pre-sales manager in a good-sized B2B software company. And I had a chance to do a substantive discovery with you. We had a very nice discovery conversation. And let me just recap with you what we talked about. So you shared that your top-level challenge, your objective that is at risk, is basically achieving quarterly and annual quota. And you said you've got certain pre-sales KPIs at risk with respect to efficiency, coaching, team development, so forth. I asked, what's going on? I believe what you told me is very simply, you have a limited range, a limited set of pre-sales resources. And you feel that there are just too many wasted demos that are going on. There's lots of harbor tours, and the end result in many cases is far too many no decision outcomes, where you don't win, you don't lose, the customer just chooses to do nothing. You said you've got insufficient visibility into what the team's doing and to your KPIs. An awful lot of what you're doing is trying to be managed in Excel spreadsheets and just email, and you said it's, I think the term you used, it's a freaking disaster. During the conversation, you described coaching as sort of a Wild West activity. And in many cases, it's very, very difficult. In fact, you commented that with respect to coaching, people don't even know what they don't know, which makes it a very difficult starting point. We talked about what you're looking for. You said, first and foremost, we got to ensure that sufficient discovery is done for all sales projects, and in particular, before we start sharing a demo with somebody, we want to make sure that accordingly, the demos actually align with what the customers are looking for. You said you need some way to track and act on the KPIs that you've been asked, you're measured on. And finally, you said you need some way to identify, train, and coach people to achieve some of the best demo practices they can. We talked about value. You said, well, very simply, you need to increase your end of the sales process, the technical wins, which is one of your KPIs, on the order of 10 to 30% over, 33% over where you are. And you said, I believe you need to reduce unqualified resource consumption, in other words, wasted demos, by half, that this is exactly the problem. We talked about timing, and you said, well, I should have updated the slide, is what you said. Anyway, you said that you need to have a solution in place by, this actually says September for those who are looking at it, September 30 for Q3, and a value realization event. In other words, the first time that you'd be able to declare one small win is when first improvements are reported by the team. So Chad, with the exception of the June here, let's just fix that right now. Hold on a second. This is actually what I would do if it was real life. You said September, correctly? Correct?
Absolutely.
So let's make September 30. And I will go back into slideshow mode here if I can. So now, with that change, is this all correct, sir?
Yes.
Perfect. And has anything changed since we spoke a week or two ago?
We have one fewer pre-sales person, so it's making it even harder to hit these numbers.
I'm sorry to hear that. So efficiency and productivity is even more important now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what you're looking at right here is actually from a tool called Vivin. And if you look at here, let's grab the pen. What you see on the left y-axis here is the forecast quantities, the quotas. Here we see each individual pre-sales person by name, and then the color coding down here, you can actually see exactly what these people are doing. So for example, prospecting here, actually let's look at this next one. Discovery here is a lead indicator of success or failure. So it looks like Aaron's doing a fair amount of discovery, Brett's doing a fair amount of discovery, but Dionne, what about these two folks right here?
It looks like zero discovery.
It's exactly correct, zero discovery. And John and the aggregate, if you will, are doing sort of an average amount of discovery, which suggests that we need to coach James and Dominique on how to do discovery better, how to set discovery calls and so forth. This enables you as a pre-sales manager to have critical insights into what your team is doing well. So Aaron is well balanced here, comparatively speaking, versus where there needs to be attention spent on specific areas. So that we hope that this is an example that will enable you to improve your KPIs in those regards. The second screen shows the SM aggregate of these activities, again from Vivin. Here we're talking about percent. Here we're talking about a time series. And again, the same and related activities. Where are people spending their time? So for example, what you see in the dark blue here, here's where people are actually making presentations of one form or another. And again, you can tell who's doing a fair amount of this versus, well, what's going on, what happened here, for example, in this time series. So you can get a sense of what's going on in the pipeline. Finally, with respect to coaching, what you're looking at here is a fabulous coaching tool, almost tailor-made for demos from an organization called Refract. So in this pane, you can actually see the recording of the demo that was taking place. So here's the buttons that are managing that. Here, you can get some statistics on where people are spending their time. So here's the rep talking, if you will. Here's the prospect, the customer responding. You can see that the talk to listen ratio, if you will, is 54%. Here you can actually see that as a time series. And then here are identified individual words that might be cues for coaching or opportunities to improve. These tools are the kind of tools, Chad, that we hope are going to enable you to reduce your wasted demos by about 50% and make your numbers and increase your sales technical win efficiencies from 10 to 33%. Are these the kinds of things you might have in mind, Chad?
Yeah, definitely. And I also wonder, how do I, since we support the sales org, how do we make sure that they don't bring us into demos that are not set up properly? Can this help?
Perfect. And everyone, what you just saw is in fact the first two elements of the great demo methodology. Element number one is a situation slide that is something that is designed to capture and re-communicate the key elements of information we need to put together and deliver a successful demo. The three software screens that you saw are example illustrations. In other words, they are end deliverables the customer is looking for, and by presenting the customer situation, confirming that the understanding is correct and that things haven't changed or have changed to find out what they are, reviewing these key deliverable screens, you engage the customer, you bring them into it, and in fact, Dionne, what just happened when I finished up that last screen with Chad? What did he do?
He offered up more information.
Yeah, he offered up more information, in this case, really in the form of a request or a question. And this is what you want to have happen, because the best demos are a two-way, bidirectional conversation. So before we go on, any questions from anyone on what we've covered so far? And Deepak is asking if we could send a PowerPoint. Absolutely. And Dionne, can you make a note of that just to remind me so I don't forget, please? Mm-hmm. Perfect. So any other questions or comments before we go on? You're welcome to use chat.
As far as the layout of the screen, how you had, there were about 4 or 5 rows. Is that do you recommend customizing that for different companies that are selling in different ways, or is that a pretty standardized layout?
You're talking about this?
On the first, yeah, this one. Because I think they're very good, right? Here's your critical business issue, your problems, your capabilities, the delta. Have you found people change those, or is that a pretty standard template that works well?
So no and yes. So this as a general template is actually very, very strong. What changes typically are what I call the labels. So somebody else might call a critical business issue a goal or objective. Problems, reasons might be pain. Specific capabilities might be needs or requirements. My training's in chemistry, so only scientists and engineers use a word like delta. Real people would use a term like value, and so forth. But these 6 elements represent the 6 elements. You're going to find there's one missing here, which I'll tell you in a moment. The 6 elements, that's a 4, sorry. The 6 elements that we need to create and make sure we've actually covered the correct information. 6 elements is actually the job title and industry. When these are complete and accurate, your probability of success goes up rather dramatically, and the likelihood of this ending up as a no decision goes down rather dramatically. And I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit further if we have time later in our session here. But Chad, does that help?
Interesting. We had a fire pit talk with about 8 people last night at the fire pit, and we talked about empathy and how critical that is when you're talking to family, friends, colleagues. To me, this sort of ensures empathy, because now I can sit in your shoes and understand and make sure we're on connection and that I understand what you're trying to accomplish. Then when I share the slideware that you showed on the screenshots, the next 3 slides, they all point back to what's shown here.
There you go. And that's the core of the methodology. Doing discovery is the first step. So with that, should we move forward, or do we want to just open this up for questions at this point? I'll let you guys decide.
I think this is great. Straightforward, and yet 95% of people get it wrong.
Okay. And that's why I'm in business. So let's go ahead and move forward. So first of all, many thanks to these 4 vendors. Many thanks to these 4 vendors. I am having exciting times today. It's very humid today, and things are very sensitive where we are up on the coast. Vivin makes a fabulous tool that I showed for pre-sales, Refract for coaching, Gong.io that was responsible for the study, and there's another tool that I haven't mentioned yet for coaching and recording demos that's Consensus. So we've talked about what's in this for you and why we might do it. We've done a brief example of what great might look like. Should we dive into 7 habits for stunningly successful demos? Everybody say yes with passion.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So with that, with respect to being on the customer side of the table, have you ever looked or felt like this in the middle of the demo? Everybody say yes with passion.
Yes.
Have you ever felt that this was happening?
Oh.
And have you ever felt like the vendor was getting this? Well, I have happy and surprising news. It doesn't have to be this way, ladies and gentlemen. So with that, here is the list of 7 habits for stunningly successful demos. So that you can read on your own. I'm not going to read this to you. We're just going to dive in. So this was the study that I referenced earlier of what is now about 7 million demos done by Gong.io that really just validates these 7 points. So numero uno, number 1, doing discovery is without question the single most important part of any sales process. And to give an example, Chad, let's say that you feel sick. Let's go back before COVID-19 just for a second. You feel sick. You think you might have the flu. You present to a doctor, Mr. Very frightening doctor right here, and you say, I think I might have the flu. He says, terrific. Go down to the pharmacy, and what I want you to do is try one of everything that's on the shelves here, and once you've done that, report back and let me know what works. How would you feel about that interaction?
Broke,
yeah. And if you use this as an analogy for a demo, this is like what kind of demo?
Show up and throw up.
Yeah, the harbor tour, the IKEA demo, the tech stick demo. So instead, what we teach people to do is to uncover the information they need to put together and deliver a successful demo. And the structure is something we call a situation slide. It has, as we mentioned before, these 6 elements. And when these are complete, as I said, your probability of success goes up rather dramatically. If they're missing or incomplete, it's a likelihood that it won't go to a close or may just go to a no decision or a competitor. So we gave an example of one of these might look like to give you a sense of where this can go, if you will. Strangely enough, the Gong study, well, I'll tell you what, Dionne, would you read this sentence right here?
Sure. What we found is that winning sales demos mirror the topics that we discussed during discovery.
Well done. And that means that by definition, you have to have done discovery in order to mirror the topics. Those folks, and I'm going to say something that could be a little bit disconcerting for some, but those folks that try to do discovery and a demo at the same time are at risk, and we can come back to that later, but I'll just give you a teaser. You are forced to do discovery that is totally in alignment with what's in your demo. So anything that's outside of that is going to cause a challenge for you, and or you'll be missing opportunities. So my strong recommendation is discovery should be a separate call. Now, you could do a vision generation demo or an ignition demo. Those are two separate things, but not a traditional harbor tour. So that's pre-demo discovery. Number two, a crisp review of the customer's situation. So that's how we started the demo here with Chad. And the idea here, let me start with something else. Chad, how many times have you ever had somebody start with a corporate overview presentation that took 10 to 15 to 20 minutes? I loved your body language, folks. Go ahead and tell me what you're...
It's a little less these days, which is a good sign that,
little less.
Yeah, it used to be almost 100%. Now maybe it's over half.
Yeah, well, over half is about over 0.5% too much. They would not have invited you to squander their time with a demo if they hadn't already done due diligence, particularly for an hour-long demo. So one of the strange things that we could all we can all take away from this. Well, go ahead, Chat. Would you be willing to read this circled?
Sure.
Or ellipted?
After the initial small talk and greetings of the web conference, account executives who conduct compelling demos prime the prospect with a contextual overview, usually lasting less than 2 minutes.
And that's exactly what the situation slide is. It's a contextual overview, a precise overview of this customer's situation, which cues them up and effectively says, yep, that's me. What are you going to do to help me solve my problem? The next one is huge. I cannot tell you how many demos I will hear the presenter say something like, I've saved the best for last. Now, this has several disconnects. What are the last?
Well, you miss it in many cases. The call's over. Oops.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Where are the high-ranking people by that point in an hour?
Yeah.
They're gone. And how is the rest of the audience's brains?
Mush.
Mush. And by the way, that means that everything else you've set up to that point is what?
Forgotten.
Pointless. So, I'm going to do a mini example of this. We have time for this. Chad or Dionne, ask me, what time is it?
What time is it?
Oh, time is one of my most favorite topics to investigate. Let's dive into that now. So in order to understand time, you need to understand what a clock is. So as it says here, a clock is an instrument used to indicate, keep, and coordinate time. Of course, the word is actually derived from the Dutch, the Northern French, the medieval Latin, and from the Celtic words klagen and klopa, which of course, as we all know, means bell. But in order to understand a clock, we've got to understand the nature of time. Time is part of a measuring system used to sequence events, compare durations of events, and intervals between them. And as we all know, time is the one thing that keeps everything from not happening at once, which would be very, very uncomfortable. But to understand time, well, we really need to understand how time is measured. So what you see here are a range of different escapement mechanisms. Now, these are ratchet-based escapements. I really prefer the pendulum. It's much more precise. It's much more accurate. But in order to understand pendulums, we need to understand pendulum math. So as everybody knows from the old equation, d squared theta over dt squared, gamma over lambda sine theta must equal 0. But of course, these are situations only where the motion does not lose energy to friction and air resistance is effectively non-existent. And what was the question again?
I think I was on this demo yesterday.
The question, I think, was what again?
What time is it?
Oh, well, it's 10:29. So what's the point? The point is, do the last thing first. And when you look at the studies done by Gong, well, tell you what, Dionne, would you start reading from here?
They start with a conclusion rather than end with it.
And Chad?
Instead of building up to the most valuable part of your demo, saving the best for last, winning demos begin with the most valuable part.
And if the two of you could read this in sync, that would be really delightful.
Peter Cohan,
in his book,
Great Demo,
Demo,
refers to this as doing the last thing first. The data agrees with Peter.
So I have to share something with you. I didn't know this study was being done. I developed this methodology just around, this is really going to be funny to use this expression, around the turn of the century. And I've been practicing it since. I practiced it in my own organizations, built the business in 2003. And I knew in my heart and my gut that this was a much better way of doing things. The study came out in late 2017, and I'm reading this study, and I read this, and I run outside, and I'm just cheering and yelling because now I've got the hard data. So it's one thing to know in your heart that this is the best or better way to do things. It's quite something else to have it validated by initially 67,149 data points, which is now, everybody say it quietly,
3 million.
3 million data points. So get to the point right away. Don't build up, but show them what is the payoff screens. And once they are interested, then it's going to turn into a fabulous exercise. Let's talk about the rest of these four items. So what can we learn from newspapers? Anybody have any ideas? Well, here, I'll just ask in the form of a question. Dionne, well, first of all, for those of you who remember newspapers, which is just like a web page on paper, how do you choose, how do you choose which article you want to read first? What do you scan for?
The large print or the picture?
Yeah, the pictures and the headlines. They're designed to grab our attention and to draw us in. And that's, in fact, what the images that I showed you as Chad called them, the slideware images, are exactly designed to do. Now, let's decide, we've decided to read this article right here. Do we read the entire article all the way through? Everybody say no. What we do is we read the first paragraph. Why?
See if it captures attention.
Yeah, it includes the high-level summary, the crisp summary of everything else in that article. The rest of the article we read in as much depth or interest as we have interest. We then exit when we're done, not necessarily when the article's done, and we go on to that next article or that next section. This has a structure. It's called, everybody read this out loud and then type in your chat dialog box. It's called inverted pyramid, yeah. And it's a fabulous tool to apply to the world of demos. The idea is you're putting the most important stuff right up front in the demo, and as you go deeper and deeper in time and into your offering, you can exit at whatever point the customer is satisfied, just like a news article. So you only go as deep as the customer is interested. So if you're talking to an executive, do you think you're going to go very deep? Everybody say no with passion. If you're going to go to middle managers, a little deeper. End users, they're thinking, oh God, oh God, oh God, we're going to have to use this. Show me the workflows. Administrators, system administrators, they're interested in very great depth, but on how to set things up and administer things. So, inverted pyramid. And in fact, Dionne, would you be willing to read this right here?
Bet. As we covered earlier, research revealed that successful sales demos are most commonly conducted in an upside-down pyramid manner.
So, ladies, yeah, this is not rocket science. Actually, I know about rocket science. My dad was a rocket scientist. This is a little bit harder, but this concept is brilliant. It's simple. It's easy. It's so logical. So we teach people how to structure their demos in an upside-down pyramid format, inverted structure. So that's inverted pyramid. Let's talk about number 5 briefly, peeling back the layers. So this is a very simple idea. What we're really talking about is, in a conversational mode, introducing capabilities or responding to needs and requests from the audience. And the idea is we are going to peel back the layers of our offering in accord with customers' depth and level of interest. And Dionne, since you're back, could you please start and read the ellipse again?
Sure. This technique comes from Peter Cohan, author of Great Demo. Peel the onion means give your buyer just enough information and present it in a way that actively provokes questions.
Yeah, and I think these 2 words for this part of this presentation are the key. Just enough information. Because demos are like onions, and if you peel an onion back too far while you're trying to prepare it, what happens?
Yeah, you break it.
You cry. So don't. You want to go and you keep testing. Is this sufficient? Would you like to explore further? Is this sufficient? Have we covered this in enough detail? What a delight. So, peeling back the layers, reprised, I said earlier that the most successful demos turn things from, well, this is what most of us feel we're receiving in most traditional demos. We're on the receiving end of a fire hose, furiously and frantically flinging features and functions, frankly, very frightening. How's that? What would the customer prefer this feel like? Well, a two-way, bidirectional conversation where the customer, he in fact thinks incorrectly that he may be driving the conversation because he's asking for questions. Strangely enough, Dionne, can you please read this ellipsoid?
Sure.
Ellipsoid.
A strong sign that a demo is going well is the rate of back and forth discussion gradually accelerates as the call progresses further and further.
This should be logical to everyone. As a customer begins to get more engaged, they see things that are interesting, they're going to ask more questions, and that's exactly where you want to be. And in fact, if you'd like proof, well, Dionne, you read this one, and then I'll read the real payoff.
Got it. Superstar sales reps are bombarded with questions during their demos compared to their peers.
And in fact, they receive 28% more questions, 28% more questions than their peers. Dionne, would you like a horror story?
Yes.
So I time speaker changes in demos. So in other words, the speaker change is a vendor presenting or talking versus a question or comment from a customer. And the average that I see in most traditional demos is 6 to 8 minutes before somebody checks in. And the check-in is generally the following phrase: any questions so far? And what do you typically hear when somebody has talked for 6 to 8 minutes and they ask, so any questions so far? What do you think you hear?
Nope.
Or, that's right, crickets in an empty room. I'm actually doing this. I can teach you guys how to do this. So what we're trying to do is turn this from a fire hose into a two-way bidirectional conversation, and that's exactly what was proven out here. So final idea is something that is, I think it's hugely important, and if you're interested in customer success, happy customers, and referenceable customers, you should take a look at this idea here. It's called transition vision. So Dionne, traditionally, if you were the customer and we're having a conversation, actually, let's do it this way. Traditional sales reps are most interested in this process up through about this point right here. The PO's received, the money's received, at which point do not get in that salesperson's way. Let's see if I can draw this using, these are legs and feet running. Just I'll tell you as I'm doing it. Those are arms. There's a head coming on here. This guy's wearing a hat, and these are the indicators of motion. Do not get in his way. This is my potato man, as he rushes to the next opportunity. Good, that's him. I would consider that a meh salesperson. Good salespeople are engaged in this through Go Live. Would you agree, Dionne? And you're muted. Don't forget, would you guys like a tip? In Zoom, you can use the space bar as a push to talk button. So if you're muted, but you just want to offer a comment or a question, push the space bar down and hold it while you talk. There you go. And then you let go and you're muted again. But truly great sales teams go one step beyond. They go to the point in time where value is beginning to be realized. This is called a value realization event. And it's the first time where the customer actually begins to be able to say, hooray, we're now beginning to get real tangible value out of this offering. And it's the point in time where they can become a reference and be willing to have that discussion about upselling, cross-selling, or anything else. So the truly great sales teams actually discuss this process with their prospects in the latter stages of discovery or after a successful demo. In fact, this is considered to be part of a successful demo so they can uncover and agree on, well, dear Mr. Customer, dear Ms. Customer, what is a good value realization event or two, so that we can organize to make sure that all these steps, implementation, training, rollout, and everything is done with a mind's eye to helping you achieve these value realization events. Strangely enough, the winning sales teams devoted right here 12.7 more time along the lines of transition vision, discussing next steps. Ladies and gentlemen, that is 7 habits for stunningly successful demos. Habit number 1, and it should be patently obvious, you got to do discovery so you know what you need to demo. The use of a situation slide is a crisp review of the customer's situation, launches a demo. Do the last thing first so you don't torture your audience with where is this going. Apply inverted pyramids, you're mapping to the most important ideas and going only as deep as the customer is interested. Similarly, peel back the layers in accord with their depth and level of interest. Turn it into a two-way bidirectional conversation, and assure that you actually have a discussion of not just how they're going to get to go live, but what will constitute success. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this portion of things useful. I'm going to turn it back to Dionne, and we can see if there's time for some questions or comments from the audience.
Absolutely. So we do have a question. When you were doing the win-loss piece, Peter, do you have any information on a win-loss analysis at value realization?
Win-loss analysis at value realization. I can share 2 things with you. The first thing is small. I see that's from Sachin. So if those vendors that don't have the discussion, the transition vision discussion, and uncover value realization events will suffer more in terms of the handoffs to customer success teams, and they'll typically see longer trajectories to the point where the customer is willing to serve as a reference or engage in a conversation to have expanded licenses or upsell possibilities. Why? Because they're still struggling to get value out of their offering. Those vendors that go through, let's go back to that go through that process with their customers and agree on what does this look like are much more targeted on how to get there more securely and in many cases more rapidly. So that's idea number 1. That's, believe it or not, the simple idea. I'm going to roll back here to a situation slide because there's a little bit more, there we go. There's another way of using a situation slide, and that's not necessarily win-loss, but that's reducing or eliminating the risk of a no decision outcome. And typically speaking, there are 3 reasons why a sales opportunity goes to no decision. Number 1, no critical business issue. Customer says, I hate using Excel, it's a pain, we live in Excel hell, but if you do not attach that pain to a goal or objective that is at risk, they will live with that hell forever.
That is true.
Number 2, have you ever heard a customer say, we just didn't see the value? Dionne, you've ever heard that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All the time. Here, under the Delta area, not only do they see the value, but guess whose numbers these were, or they are? They're not the vendors, they're the customer's numbers. So not only are they defensible, but he or she can take these uphill to the CFO and say, look, if I get this software, I expect to be able to achieve these kinds of objectives, which is going to bring us more revenue, more quota, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's enabling the person to sell internally. Number 3, the 3 reasons why typically a sales opportunity goes to no decision. Any guesses, Dionne?
No critical date.
Yeah, would you like proof?
Sure.
Would any of us have ever written those papers in college or university if we didn't have a due date? So things will go, I cannot tell you how many times I'll hear somebody, a customer say, when I ask, when do you need to have a solution in place? They say, oh, right away, ASAP. And I always think, this is not a good sign. Because ASAP is not definable. You need a date by when they need to have a solution in place, that if they miss this, bad things will happen. So compliance, regulatory, end of the quarter, their budget cycles, these are all examples of critical dates by when the customer would need to have a solution in place. So Seichin and folks, does that help? And I hope I'm pronouncing your name
Absolutely.
correctly. Oh, good. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I bet you used the space bar, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Isn't that a thing? I love Zoom. Any other questions or comments?
As you're all thinking it through, Peter, I'm gonna borrow some of your tips and tactics that I've noticed. Top 1 or 2 takeaways from this discussion with Peter that you're gonna take back to either use yourself or share with your team. Put that in the chat, if you will, please.
And I will make the comment that if you send us your email, we will send out, or send me your email, which might be an easier way to go about this. I'll go ahead and send this presentation to you. And I'll have to check and see how large it is. I may have to send it via WeTransfer because it may be too big for many email systems. But that's a great way to actually send these large docs.
Yep.
All right. Anything else from anyone? Otherwise, I'll turn things back to Dionne and we can wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you everybody for sharing. Deepak, I see that you're talking about the team sharing. Yeah. Well, you know what, Deepak, it's never too late. So Peter is one of the best. And so I would definitely engage with him too. And then, yep, so Deepak has put his email in there, Peter. And I love, yeah, I agree with you, the discovery, and the inverted pyramid for sure. So many times we'll go into a demo and, oh my gosh, right? We don't want to hear the backstory. We just want the punchline. I agree with you, Bud, too. Yeah, and the internal presentation. So Peter, that's a really good question. Have you, talk a little bit about when you are doing some of this work with your clients, Bud was talking about using these concepts to present internally. Has that ever happened?
All the time. In fact, it's really interesting that Bud, you raised this, and Dionne, you surfaced it, that I was chatting with somebody yesterday who said she had just applied, she'd been through a great demo workshop, and she had just applied this in an internal meeting, and she said it was funny because the way she phrased it, she says, I was shocked. It went perfectly. It was exactly as you said. And we left, here was one of the keys, we made the decision that we needed to make, it was the right decision, and we finished the meeting early. So these are, with all due respect, I teach demo skills, but these are principles that apply in many sales communications and even some human interactions. By the way, don't try this on your spouse, please, that's not a good plan. But for business communications, getting the point right away, being clear on what somebody's looking for, and showing the end deliverable right up front causes them to say, okay, I can see where this is going, and then encourages them to basically ask for the level of detail that they are interested in.
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree. It's so funny you talk about practicing on your spouse. So whenever I do training, Peter, and we'll read like a new concept on sales or a new book or whatever. And one of my favorites is the Asking Formula. I love that book. And I always say to folks, I'm like, go practice on your kids, practice on your spouse. So it's funny you talk about that. I would agree. Yes. So for everyone out there, please feel free to reach out to Peter, but also be aware that Peter will be reaching back out to you. We will share this recording with everybody. It will also be housed in the SalesClass.ai platform. So I put the link to join in the chat box. And does everybody know how to save the chat? There were some good pieces in here. So if you are in the chat right now, as you open it up on the bottom right, there are 3 little dots. And if you hover over it, it says more, and you can save the chat. So there's some information in there if you want to go ahead and do that. So thank you so much for joining us, Peter. Thank you for being our very first Sales Class Live. presenter. We really appreciate you doing that. Again, everybody, Peter has some videos within the SalesClass platform. Number one. Number two, you'll get his presentation, the recording. I encourage you to reach back out to him to keep the conversation going. Join the SalesClass platform, and we've got some more live events coming up, and we will definitely have Peter back with us. And so if you have attended this session, once Peter comes back towards the end of the year, we would love to hear your feedback on who's used some of these tips, right? We'd love to get that feedback and those stories to share with everybody. Friday Gold, I love it. Thank you. Peter, any parting words for everybody?
Never stop learning.
Yes.
All right, guys, it was a delight to invest this time with you today. I hope you found it useful and looking forward to interacting with you in the future. And thanks to SalesClass.ai, Dionne and Chad for putting this all together. This is a fabulous platform. Take a look.
Thank you so much, Peter. Everybody have a great weekend. We will chat with you soon. Thank you.
Bye now.